When technology first started becoming what we know it as in today's world of movies, the world was unaware of the impact such technological developments would have on society. Film has shaped our ways of communicating and understanding each other. We have learned from it, and we have been entertained by it. The Great Train Robbery was one of the first film movies with a plot in the early 20th century. The technology in the movie is shown primarily through transportation and explosives. Of course, the technology is a train, which reveals the main form of transportation back in the day, despite it being a part of the plot. Guns and small bombs were the source of explosives for the train robbers. This shows how effective things on a screen can be to people who are not used to seeing moving pictures, and they thought that the man shooting at the end was actually going to physically shoot them, and it is said that the people in the theater ducked down because they were afraid that they were going to get shot. The color seen in the movie is not due to any advanced technology used, but instead is a result of hand-painted film. D.W. Griffith's movie is an accurate indication of what technology was like in 1916. Cars were becoming a popular form of transportation as more and more people began driving. Telephones were now a great source of communication between people, businesses, and governments alike. And just like in the Great Train Robbery, guns were also displayed as an ongoing, ever-changing use of technology for violence. The technology innovations of the 1927 movie The Jazz Singer is displayed mostly through its use of sound in the movie rather than the physicality within the plot. It is one of the first movies to successfully use the actor's voice as a source of sound rather than a post-recorded score of instruments. Handwritten letters were a popular source of long-distance communication still, an art that is slowly dying out in today's world of texting and emailing. Considered one of the first successful full-length films in color for the 1930s, The Wizard of Oz used various technologies of filmmaking to create the special effects that were so innovative back then. Switching from 3 types of film color, from black and white to color to sepia, was a first for movies. And much like the Great Train Robbery, smoke was used to simulate explosions and fire to make Oz seem all the more powerful. First indications of computer technology were shown through various buttons and lights, letting the audience know that Oz is advanced and superior in his knowledge of technology.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
Citizen Kane is a simple yet effective way of incorporating technology into movies. There is no extraordinary technological advancement displayed. However, it is significant in that it shows how movie technology was advancing via projections and screens, as the screens began to get smaller.
When Charles Foster Kane died, he said just one word.
Rosebud.
War of the Worlds is perhaps an unrealistic representation of the technology used in the 1950s. However, it is accurate to the technology used in filmmaking at the time. Color and sound was now a staple in the film industry, budding from the innovations of The Wizard of Oz and The Jazz Singer. And much like the effects shown in The Wizard of Oz as well as The Great Train Robbery, there is a great use of smoke to indicate explosions or gun, in this case laser shots. Sparks began to be used as a violent technology for science fiction movies that further indicated laser shooting, technology that people watching the movie at the time did not yet comprehend, hence the aliens' use of it. Breakfast at Tiffany's is perhaps an average representation of the technology used in the 1960s. There are no sci-fi computers or cell phones just yet, realistically, but the use of telephones with winding dials and buttons were amongst the main source of communication for that time period. Star Wars was perhaps the most innovative film of the 70s. The imagination and use of computer and CGI technology was advanced for the time period. There is a lot of technology shown in the movie that was not used at the time, like computers, but eventually became widely used and accepted years later. Robots were also displayed as an alien-like technology that people were not used to seeing. and perhaps thought would never become a technology in the real world.
Several fighters have broken off from the main group. Come with me.
Pretty in Pink is another realistic indication of technology for the time period. Computers were just becoming popular, and this clip shows the first forms of what we now know to be instant messaging. This technology is another form of communication that substitutes the use for talking to someone verbally, like in Breakfast at Tiffany's, or writing that person a letter, like in The Jazz Singer. The computer form of communicating is much like that shown in the futuristic world of Star Wars. This technology also stems from the innovations of the telegraph and telephone, which were popularly shown in films from earlier decades. In the 90s, technology began taking off in terms of innovations and advancements. Cell phones became popular as the new mobile telephone, and computers became a household staple. This clip is similar to Pretty in Pink in that it shows how our realistic advancements were utilized in the film industry as an important medium for communicating. This is perhaps a general representation of action movies in today's world of film. It still incorporates the use of smoke and explosions for violence just as it was shown in earlier films like The Great Train Robbery or The War of the Worlds. However different the medium is conveying that technology on screen, it still originates from these earlier film innovations. Lights, fires, and sparks are all forms of technology shown that has originated in films like War of the Worlds and Star Wars. Guns are still a violent technology used in film, but instead of trains, cars and helicopters are main sources of transportation. Today, technology as we know it is constantly being updated and transformed into new technologies. The film industry is constant in its keeping up with the technological world with its desire to be relevant to audiences. We have started incorporating old technologies such as the first moving images, the first colors in movies, the first form of long-distance communicating via cell phones, and the use of the newly introduced computer into newer and more compact technologies that utilize all of these separate technologies by combining them into one. Each of these films is a realistic as well as futuristic indication of what technology was, will continue to be, and will eventually be.